Hello and welcome to the CBV podcast.
Hello and welcome. I hope everyone's having a good day. So, yesterday morning, really early hours of the morning, I finished watching all of DC Fandom live on my laptop in its entirety. I got through all the announcements, all the updates, and the only thing I want to talk about, at least for today, is the Batman trailer that was released. Wow, what a way to end DC Fandom. They really did leave the best thing till last, and I couldn't be happier. From all the things we'd heard about from Matt Reeves about what his vision for this film was, I had an expectation for what that film he was pitching was going to be, and I also had hopes for what I wanted my dream Batman movie to be. And this trailer that they released has met those expectations for his pitch, and has also met up to my hopes and dreams of what my ideal Batman movie is going to be. And I think this is going to be potentially my favorite Batman film. I'm just very surprised that we even got a full 2-minute trailer. I thought we would get maybe a 30-second teaser or some concept art, or maybe a little clip. I did not think we would get a full 2-minute trailer. And the reason I say that is because only 25% of the Batman has actually been filmed, and that's because the pandemic obviously occurred and just completely put all production on hold and pause. So they've still yet got to finish the other 75% of the film. But if this trailer is representing a quarter of what they filmed, my God, I cannot wait to see what else is in store for this film, because you would not think that they hadn't finished the film, or at least filmed most of it. This looks like a fully fleshed out idea, concept. So I am so excited. Let's just talk about the specifics of my thoughts of this trailer. First of all, the tone, I think, is really important, and I think they really clearly established that this is going to be a very dark, a very gritty and grounded Batman, similar to the way Christopher Nolan set the tone for his Dark Knight trilogy, specifically the Dark Knight, I'd say. But it looks like Matt Reeves has taken that sort of inspiration of how dark you can take the Batman, at least, and he's just gone a bit beyond that, and I'm happy to see that it's even more grounded and dark and gritty. I think that's great that we're taking it to the next level, especially after seeing Joker last year, where that took it to a really dark and personal level, and I'm glad we're doing that with this. So the tone's great. I want to talk about the Riddler, because he is the one thing I am so curious and excited about. I have always wanted to get a new Riddler interpretation. The only one we've got in film is Jim Carrey's Riddler, and I liked it. It's fun, but when it comes to Batman, I want it to be dark and gritty. And as much as I have enjoyed Batman Forever, that is just campy fun. But I just want to take the Riddler seriously, at least in one movie interpretation, and it looks like they're doing that here, so I'm really happy to see that. I love the fact that the Riddler is faceless throughout the entire trailer. We do not see Paul Dano, the actor. We do not see his face throughout the trailer. I think that's great. I think you need to keep the Riddler in the shadows, and it just creates an atmosphere about who this guy is, leaving these clues, making these murders, clearly trying to make a point to Batman personally. So I think that's great that we don't see his face. That's not to say that we don't see him in the trailer at all. We do get to see one scene in particular, which I believe features the Riddler, and that is right at the beginning of the trailer, where we see someone who has covered up their identity in some kind of mask and big jacket, and they have killed someone by the looks of it, and they're wrapping the victim's head in duct tape just to leave a message on it saying "No more lies." And I think that's such a Riddler thing to do. So, and it becomes even more evident that is probably the Riddler, because later when the GCPD go to the crime scene to investigate that corpse and look into the situation, they find a green envelope with a card inside it with a little Riddle in it, so I think it's pretty evident that we have seen the Riddler in the trailer. I will be curious to see if that's how we see him every time he goes out committing crimes, because I'd be fine with that if they did. I was a bit worried about what the costume would look like. Like, is it going to be a green suit with some question marks somewhere? Like, if you're going to take it really grounded, I'm glad they steered away from specifically using the color green heavily for the Riddler, but there's still little nods to his costume in what he's wearing in that opening scene. You can see little shade. You can see a shade of green on his jacket, and even though he's wearing a mask, you can see he's wearing some kind of glasses or goggles on his face. So it does evoke little subtle nods to the Riddler, so I'm glad that, you know, they haven't completely steered away from it, but I'm also glad that it's a completely different look, and I hope they keep covering his face up, at least for 3/4 of the film. Of course, we're going to have to see Paul Dano's face by the end, and for Batman to defeat him or arrest him, I highly doubt the Riddler's going to get away with it, but I would like it if they could hold off as long as possible from revealing what the Riddler looks like in the film. As well as that, I'm also really happy to see that he has a modulated voice. When we do hear Paul Dano speak, we hear that the Riddler sounds like he's got a modulated voice, which is great. If you're going to cover your identity, you got to disguise that voice a little bit as well. And I think that modulated voice really adds to how creepy he can sound, being in the shadows, and this sort of godlike voice is just talking to Batman, messing with him. So I love that. And of course, we get to see him leave those clues and riddles at the crime scenes, which is great. That's just a trademark Riddler thing to do. I think without that, I don't know if he would really be Riddler anymore, so I'm glad that they're still doing that. More specifically with the clues, the first clue that we see in the trailer is when Commissioner Gordon is opening a green envelope addressed to Batman specifically, and in it there's like a little rhymey riddle, but underneath, specifically at the bottom of the card, we see some coded text. I have no idea what those symbols mean, but immediately just looking at that, I can tell that this movie is definitely going to be a detective-based Batman film, unlike previous films in the past. Like, we did get sort of detective scenes in the Dark Knight trilogy, but they were very small portions of the film. So it looks like this new Batman movie is gonna basically be a crime noir film. It's gonna have the Batman show off that he is the world's greatest detective, and we're gonna see that throughout the movie. So I'm very happy that we actually get to see the Batman actually doing some detective work. Like I said, it feels like a crime noir film. More specifically, it reminds me of David Fincher's Seven movie. But it just happens to feature Batman characters, and I think that is a great tone for this film. So I'm very happy about that. I also hope if that's the tone I'm getting, I also hope that they can push the rating of the film to maybe an R rating or 15 in the UK. I don't think it needs it. I think you could do this film and still make it PG-13 or a 12 in the UK, but I just think it would. I think you could push the boundaries more by making it at least a 15, and you don't have to heavily go into like blood and stuff. Just little things, like you could make the victims sort of you can make the crimes a bit more horrific, like they did in Seven. You can have them swear a little bit, like the GCPD. I don't know. It doesn't have to be, as I said, but if they do, that'll be like a little bonus. But it won't ruin the film if they don't make it an R-rated thing. I mean, yeah, it'll be cool, but I'm not gonna lose sleep over the idea that it's not R-rated. But fingers crossed. Who knows? Oh yes, the no more lies meaning on the Riddler's first victim in the trailer. I assume that just means that is addressing the corruption in general throughout Gotham. There's corruption clearly within the GCPD. as we've seen in Batman's history. But right at the end of the trailer, we hear Riddler talking to Batman saying, you know, you're a part of this too. And Batman's like, how am I a part of this? And the Riddler's saying, you'll see, you'll find out. And I assume that is referring to Bruce Wayne's parents, because, you know, that is not a particularly new storyline. We've seen it in the past that Bruce finds out his parents were into some shady stuff. So I'd be fine if we were bringing that plot point up again, because Bruce really does hold his parents at a high level. He thinks the world of them. So I think that would be a good way for the Riddler to mess with Batman, to show him, you know, your parents weren't as great as you think they were. So, you know, that could be addressing that. Also, I know we're still at the beginning, talking about the beginning of the trailer, but as soon as that song started, I've heard that apparently that's a Nirvana song. I'm not hugely familiar with Nirvana's music, so I only know a few songs, but apparently that's a Nirvana song. Certainly sounds like it. But when that guitar started playing, as Commissioner Gordon's walking through the corridor, I got serious Logan vibes when hearing that. Just the music was so appropriate to show that it was like an indie style comic book film, you know, like just like Logan. Like, it was less spectacle and more character focused. Of course there was some spectacle, like the action was great in Logan, but it was very character focused, and I hope that using the Nirvana song is also an indication that this isn't going to be a typical Batman movie. We are going to focus more on the characters and on these intimate situations and crimes. So, you know, that gave me chills hearing the song start playing as we were walking towards the crime scene in the trailer. Speaking of Commissioner Gordon, we got to see him in action, and he looks great. I believe he's played by someone called Jeffrey Wright. I have seen clips of him, but I have not seen his work fully. I've not watched like a full episode or series of him in, I think it's called Westworld. I have not seen that. I know he's in it. And I haven't seen any movies with him in it that I'm aware of. So regardless though, with the little I have seen of him, I'm very happy. He looks like he's doing a great job, and I can totally take him seriously as Commissioner Gordon. He looks awesome and fantastic. Next, we get to see Robert Pattinson's suit finally in action, walking around the crime scene. Again, it's nice to see Batman walk around a crime scene because he is the world's greatest detective, and we don't get to see that a lot of the police. His suit looks great. I love how functional his suit is. To be honest, at first I did have to get used to it, but when Matt Reeves explained it's a very functional suit, it's a very practical suit, it's something he's made himself from scratch. I'm like, okay, now I can see it. Yeah, when you put it in that context, I really quickly warmed up to the suit, and I really do like it. It's really cool, especially when he walks in, we get a shot of his boots. Like, they're not very traditional Batman boots. They're very clearly boots that he managed to grab from a store or something. Like, they don't look like Batman boots. They look like regular boots that just happen to go with the costume. So I love little things like that his suit is more practical and homemade, and I think that's so appropriate for this film, especially with the fact that I think it's supposed to be set in his second year as Batman. So he's already been Batman, but he's still figuring himself out. He's still upgrading his suit. So I think that's a very nice touch for the time in Batman's life that we're seeing. The voice, the Batman voice, is great as well. It's got a very good balance between doing a normal voice and doing a Batman voice. Like, I'm glad we didn't go for the modulated Batman voice, because we've already had that with Ben Affleck, and in that universe, with that fantastical world, it makes sense that Batman would be able to do that. But if we're making it very grounded and realistic, I find it kind of hard to think that he would be able to get himself a modulated voice, especially with the fact that his suit is very sort of amateur Batman looking. So I'm glad that he's just doing his own voice. But I'm also glad it's not the really over-the-top, gruffled, rough Christian Bale sounding voice. He's managed to get a really nice balance of sounding like a normal person, but at the same time you can tell he's put a little bit of a rough voice on it as well. Nothing too over the top. So I'm very happy to hear his Batman. And the eye makeup as well. For when he takes the mask off. Like, that always bothered me. Like, I was watching Batman Returns with Michael Keaton, and there's a point where he rips his mask off but before he rips his mask off, you can clearly tell he paints around his eyes to make his eyes blend with the mask. But when he takes it off, the eye makeup's gone. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, yeah, you clearly wear eye makeup so your face blends in better with the mask. But it's nice to see when Robert Pattinson takes his mask off, he's still got that eye makeup, and I think that looks twice as cool and creepy, and sort of it's smeared because of all the crap he's had to go through to fight all these villains. So I think that looks great, and I'm really happy to see that they've gone for that look, and it just makes more sense. Just another detail that adds to the realism of this Batman. With Batman, I've also got to talk about Bruce. I don't really have too much to say about Bruce. We don't really get to see him speak much. We get to hear him at the end of the trailer, but he's kind of doing a soft whisper. So I can't really judge him on his Bruce acting quite yet, but I have no problems with it so far. Although he does seem very Batman-esque, even as Bruce. And again, I'm fine with that. I'm sure people are going to complain that he's not doing his Playboy persona, because the idea in the comics is that Batman is his real identity and Bruce is just an act. But I'm fine with the fact that he's not doing his Playboy shtick, because again, it's early in his career, so he's still figuring all this stuff out. So he may realize, okay, I better like ham up the fact that I'm not Batman. Because in his face, he seems very serious all the time as Bruce Wayne. So I'm sure that's something he'll learn later. But so it still makes sense. It doesn't ruin his Bruce version of Bruce for me. And again, it's his own version of Bruce that I can separate from all the other Bruce Waynes we've seen in films. So yeah, I'm fine with it. But there's just not a lot to say about it. I think he looks cool. But yeah, no, his Bruce is fine. It's also cool to see that even though this is like early in Batman's career, he's been around still long enough that he's really, really well known by the police, and they're able to let him look at crime scenes. So I love that we're getting that nice balance in the time period. However, that doesn't stop there being tension between Batman and the police, as we do see in the trailer that a fight breaks out between him and the police in the GCPD, and I think that is a really cool scene to see that he's not fully trusted. It seems like only Commissioner Gordon is on his side. So yeah, not an origin story, which is great because we've seen that origin story so many times. I think everyone knows why Batman is Batman by now. So yeah, I think it's, I mean, again, if we get it in a flashback, yeah, okay, yeah, I'm not bothered. We don't need to see it. He could just say it. I mean, I don't want to see it again, but at least it's not, we don't have to see him become Batman. At least by now he's actually Batman from the get-go. The Batcave. That was interesting. I liked how simple and small the Batcave was. It wasn't this grand, over-technological place. It was very small. It just looked like it had a desk with some computer monitors on it and the Batmobile in the background. That was pretty much the setup for it, and I think that's great. It didn't look like it was actually in the Batcave, and I say that because in the trailer, we see Robert Pattinson, Bruce Wayne, on his motorbike driving through a graveyard, and then it cuts to him arriving at the Batcave. So that makes me wonder, has his Batcave not been properly set up yet? Is this like in his parents' tomb, or is it just so happened that there's a graveyard near the Batcave? Like, I'm very curious to know if they've changed the location of the Batcave, but I'm glad that it's very minimalistic and small, because again, it's his early Batman career. Matches the suit, matches the tone in the time period, so I'm happy with this Batcave. We get to hear Alfred's voice as well. We never see Alfred, who's played by Andy Serkis, but we get to hear his voice, and it really reminds me of Gotham's Alfred from the Gotham show, which is fine. It just reminded me, oh yeah, we're going to get like a younger Alfred, which is cool. I'm glad to see that, and he's not particularly posh. He sounds quite rough, like Gotham's Alfred, so that's cool to hear. Yeah, and it also just reminded me of what Gotham seemed to be trying to do in season 1 with its tone, and just kind of let go by season 2 onwards. Like in season 1, it seemed to be very grounded, crime show, and then by season 2 it just kind of let go of that completely and just went kind of bonkers with its characters, which was cool. But it's nice to see that at least this Batman interpretation is very much sticking with the grounded look at this world. So yeah, cool to see. And I'm very much looking forward to seeing Andy Serkis in another trailer in the future. Catwoman, who's being played by Zoe Kravitz. I'm only familiar with her in Fantastic Beasts, The Crimes of Grindelwald, and seeing her in X-Men First Class as Angel. So other than that, I don't really know a lot about her acting career, but I like her. I've never not liked her, so I'm happy to see that she's getting a chance to shine as a character so iconic as Catwoman. Also, her fighting in it looks awesome. She's so agile. There's a scene where she's fighting against Batman, and that looks really cool. She has a really cool costume as well. It's very basic as well, more basic than the Batman costume, which is very cool to see. Like she's a cat burglar, so of course she's not going to have a Catwoman suit, especially if this is early on in her career as well. So she just has a regular cat burglar costume, a little hood over her head, and the sides of her mask just happen to be pointed to kind of give you a nod to the Catwoman ears. So I'm really happy to see that they're not going for the full comic book Catwoman suit, but they are giving you nods to it, so it is apparent that it is her. So I like her costume. It's actually my favourite one. I don't know if that's bad to say, but it's actually my favourite Catwoman costume we've seen. Because, I mean, my problem with Anne Hathaway's Catwoman was her costume. It just still looked a bit too fantastical a little bit. Like, yeah, she was wearing just basic leather costume and she had goggles, but when she put the goggles up, it was forming cat ears, and I was like, is that really got a functionality? Because I don't think we ever call her Catwoman in The Dark Knight Rises, so that just kind of distracted me. So I'm glad that we're seeing another grounded costume for Catwoman. That makes even more sense, that she just looks like a cat burglar and it just happens to have little points on that mask to make the cat ears. So very happy with her costume. She also gets a motorbike, which is cool. Again, reminds me of Anne Hathaway, but at least it's a normal motorbike and not this one she's taken from Batman. So yeah, I like that as well. It makes sense. You know, if you're going to steal stuff, you need kind of a getaway vehicle. So it makes sense to me. Speaking of vehicles, we get to see the Batmobile in action, and that looks awesome. I've ever since they released the photos for the Batmobile, I've been sold that is going to be my favourite Batmobile, because I love the fact that it's actually a car again. We're not doing a bat tank, it's a car now. Because I was never really... I understood why we were doing a tank sort of thing for the Dark Knight trilogy, but I did miss it being a car. So it's really cool to see it's a car again, and I'm so happy to see it in action. It looks so cool. One thing I think a lot of people have missed, which I'm glad that I noticed because it's got me more excited, was I'm pretty sure we saw Penguin in this trailer. Now I know you're all thinking, if you understand who the cast is, I know some of you are probably thinking, that's Colin Farrell playing the Penguin. That looks nothing like Colin Farrell. I know, but like, makeup's getting really good these days, and I know he put on weight, but he didn't put on that much weight. So I reckon he's in an extra bit of a fat suit, and they've put a lot of prosthetic makeup on him. I mean, look at Gary Oldman in that, I think it was called The Darkest Hour. He plays Winston Churchill. They did such a great job with that makeup. They could totally disguise Colin Farrell for the Penguin role. And if that is him, I'm convinced it is him, but if it is him, it looks awesome. If you look in the trailer, there's like a shot of a guy just staring at the camera in the rain with the thunder striking, a fat guy. I'm convinced that is the Penguin, and he looks so good. I really hope that is him. But what confirmed it for me, other than that look, because I did have to sort of watch the trailer a few times to figure out if I was convinced if it was him or not, was we hear him speak in the car chase with the Batmobile, and he's saying something, oh my god, this guy's crazy. And when he says that, I'm like trying to picture Colin Farrell in my head. I'm like, that is definitely Colin Farrell's voice. So I'm convinced that is him as the Penguin. So that looks awesome. We're getting so many villains. Catwoman, Riddler, Penguin. And even, I think we're getting nods to Joker potentially. Not that Joker's in this movie, but we're getting henchmen with white faces and dark eyes and dark smiles painted on them. And that looks like it's hinting towards a sort of Joker cult or a Joker following. But again, I don't want to see Joker in this movie. Just build up the world. We can acknowledge that Joker's in this world, but I don't want to see him. But I presume they're Joker's henchmen. Otherwise, I'm going to say they're Penguins. But this version of Penguin doesn't look like he would encourage his followers to put on ridiculous makeup. So I'm going to have to presume that that's Joker. And they look pretty cool. So it's cool to see how many villains we're actually getting this thing. In the trailer, we see that the Riddler has a car crash into a funeral that Bruce is attending. And there's a victim that comes out with a bomb attached to him. And that was interesting. One, it set the stakes up to what the Riddler's willing to do with his victims, which was cool to see. But also it made me wonder, because the victim has another envelope attached to him saying, "To the Batman." But the Batman's not technically in sight. It was just Bruce Wayne. So does Riddler know that Batman is Bruce Wayne? Because that would make sense, because the Riddler considers himself to be the smartest person in the room, so it makes sense that he would have figured out what Bruce Wayne's identity really is as the Batman. So yeah, I think that's very, very interesting. And it's more interesting because later in the trailer we cut back to that victim actually well, I presume it's the victim has actually exploded at the funeral, but it's Bruce Wayne's got in his Batman gear to stop it. And that made me wonder one thing that was a little worrying is, did he make a really cheesy costume change? Are they going to explain how he had such quick access to his Batman costume? I hope they explain that, because that might distract me in the movie to think he did a really quick costume change. But it still looks cool. And it's cool to see that it looks like Batman doesn't succeed in saving the victim. So that's going to weigh in on Batman's sort of morale and guilt. So, yeah, he clearly is the Riddler's clearly testing Batman, so that's cool to see. As I mentioned, the henchmen, I'm pretty sure they're Joker's henchmen, but it could be Penguins, because that would also make sense. But what's cool, if you weren't sold on Robert Pattinson as the Batman, just watch that clip in the trailer of him beating the crap out of that henchman. He is ruthless and brutal, and it clearly shows that he hasn't learnt to have that self-restraint about how much he should be beating on people, because he should have stopped quite a few punches ago. Like, I'm pretty sure he punches him a few times, he breaks the guy's arm, he punches him till he falls, and then when you think he's going to stop, he throws another 2 punches down while the guy's lying on the ground. So he's definitely brutal and an unhinged Batman that needs to learn that restraint. But that fight was so cool. Like, for me, the best Batman fight scene was Ben Affleck's Batman fight in the warehouse of Batman v Superman. But this is so good. He was so quick with those punches. He didn't rely on any gadgets. He just got in there straight and killed, not killed the guy, but he he totally, like, he probably put him in a coma in like 5 seconds. It was just so quick and just showed how powerful he was. So yeah, that was epic. That was really, really cool. Yeah, I can't fault him. Robert Pattinson has proven himself that he can put on the cowl and do a good job as Batman. I mean, I was never against him. I was never like hugely excited. I was like, oh, okay, that's an interesting choice. I know he's done a lot of films and he is a capable actor, so I'm curious to see what he brings to the table, but I was never like against him being Batman just because of the Twilight films, because he's done other stuff besides that and he's shown that he can act very well. So I'm very happy for him that he's been able to prove people wrong, that he can do the role justice. So yeah, if you're not sold on it, just watch that fight scene. That tells you everything you need to know about his Batman. But while that fight's actually happening, you can see when they cut back to the reaction of the rest of the henchmen, you can see one of the henchmen is filming on his phone. One, that's interesting because the henchmen didn't actually know who the Batman was, and quickly the Batman showed them who he was. So that clearly shows that Batman has been around long enough for the police to know who he is, but not long enough for Penguin and the henchmen to know who he is. So that's quite interesting as well. But presumably, if he's recorded it on his phone and Batman doesn't take the phone off him, a lot of people are going to quickly figure out that Batman is a real thing, which will be interesting as well. But also that confuses me for what the time period is, because I thought this was supposed to be set in the 90s, but I don't know if, I'm pretty sure phones weren't able to film like that. So is this set in present day? Is this like early Batman in 2020? Or like maybe earlier in the 2000s? Like, I'm very curious to see when this is actually set, because I don't think it's set in the 90s anymore. It definitely looks like it's set more present day, which is going to be, again, very interesting. And why not? Why not set it in present day? I think that's cool. I don't think it needed to be in the 90s. I think it can just do its own thing. It doesn't need to be set in a different time period necessarily. Yeah, that's pretty much all the pointers I had on what I noticed. I only have one complaint. It's not even a complaint, maybe a concern. I think the brightness of the film could be brought up a little. There are moments where it feels like the shot is too dark to fully appreciate the Batman suit. And because it does feel like it's all set at nighttime, and I know Batman mainly works at night, and Bruce Wayne will be shot mainly in the day, but it's very dark, this film, and I'm not against that, because Batman is an inherently dark character, so it makes sense to have this film be dark visually and tonally. But I think they could have brought up the brightness just a bit more, because it sometimes does look a bit too dark. Having said that, the trailer I watched on YouTube was when I was finding it dark, but when I watched, I think IGN on their website has a really HD copy of the trailer, and that looked a lot better to watch. So maybe it's just the quality of the trailers that have been put on YouTube, but they could still bring it up a little bit. Like, even if the quality wasn't fully HD on YouTube, I should still be able to see what's going on a bit more. But literally, that is my only complaint. And if that is my, not complaint, concern, if that is my only concern, then well done, Batman. Well done. I am sold. I cannot wait. This is now officially my most anticipated film for 2021. And I think it comes out in October, which is so frustrating, because we have got an amazing trailer for a film that is not coming out for another 14 months? So, my God, that is going to be a long, long wait. And I think now they have to be really careful for future trailers, because, these days trailers come out a lot for one movie. So, we've already seen an amazing trailer already, over a year in advance. So when they start bringing out those trailers closer to the release date, they're going to have to be really sort of careful about how much they show, because obviously they're going to want those trailers to be better than this one. But if I'm already sold, I don't need to see any more. But I cannot help myself. If they release more trailers, I'm going to watch them, because I have no self-control with trailers. I love trailers. They're so fun when it comes to waiting for a film to be released. So yeah, those are all my thoughts. So happy. I cannot wait to see this film or another trailer, but that won't be for a very long time. But man, that was the highlight of... I haven't been so excited in ages, especially in times like these with the pandemic. It's just really nice to get such an exciting thing occur. So yeah, I'm very happy. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already, to keep up to date with all my podcasts regarding movie talk, TV talk, and video game talk. And if you'd like to support the channel even more, there is a link in the description to my newly released single, available on iTunes now. The track is called Take It Off. It's performed by the Undersiders, so do check it out, have a listen if you like it. It's available for purchase. You can also check out the music video we've made for it recently. That's available now. Thank you so much for all of your support. So for now, take care.